had been by Joel's side since I was 23. For 7 years. Until the day another 23-year-old girl appeared beside him. The day he announced I was out. He smiled mercilessly. Gloria. Her eyes really look like yours when you were younger. Later. It was also him, with reddened eyes, begging me, wanting to place the best things in the world into my hands. But no one waits for him in the same place forever. I have already found my own happiness. Chapter 1. I brought Joel his medicine when I walked into the office. He was turned sideways, patiently guiding a young girl through her exercises. The president of a listed company personally tutoring a rookie employee. It looked like a scene straight out of some romantic idol drama. Earlier I had vaguely heard that Joel had made an exception to recruit a fresh undergraduate into the company and had been calling her into the president's office every few days. I had been half doubtful about it, until I saw this warm and sweet scene with my own eyes. The floating suspicion finally disappeared. So Joel really had found a new love, and she was an innocent Cinderella. Don't blame me. When you've been a canary for too long, your thinking inevitably becomes narrow. Chapter 2. She recognized me. After seeing me, she immediately lost interest in the exercises. Her eyes suddenly lit up. She grabbed Joel's arm and shook it naturally and familiarly. Oh my gosh. Isn't this Gloria? Joel, am I studying so hard that my eyes are blurry? My favorite beautiful sister just walked out of the TV. Looking at Joel's sleeve that had been wrinkled terribly by her tugging, my heart skipped a beat. Wasn't that a bit too much? Yet he tolerated the girl's boldness. Instead, the way he looked at me, the uninvited guest, carried displeasure and a warning. Without showing anything on my face, I slipped the medicine box back into my pocket. My palms began to sweat uncontrollably. The naive girl seemed completely unaware of the strange atmosphere. President. Why is Gloria here? Wow. I just realized, your names are Joel and Gloria. Could it be? As she spoke, she seemed to have discovered some huge secret. Gasping dramatically and covering her mouth, Joel let out a helpless yet indulgent sigh. He tapped the exam paper on the table with his knuckles. The company's spokesperson isn't something you should worry about. Aren't you afraid of losing your job? Wah. Mr. President, I'm terrified. She lowered her head and muttered, thinking she was speaking very quietly. Forget it, if I don't get skinned alive at work. How will I pay off the debt for that broken car? Damn capitalist. Joel seemed to find her adorable. A faint smile, rare for him, appeared on his usually indifferent face. If you know you have debts to repay, then do your exercises properly. At that moment, I understood. In the love story between a CEO and his Cinderella, no girl is willing to be the villainous supporting character. I took my hand out of my pocket and smiled lightly. Sorry for disturbing you. I'll go talk with your assistant about the cooperation instead. He responded casually with an dismissing me. The moment I turned around, my tears fell. But before I turned around, I had performed flawlessly. That was probably one of the best acting performances of my life. But a canary should have this kind of awareness. When the patron finally meets the girl he truly likes, the canary should bury her feelings, and even her own existence, as quickly as possible. Chapter 3. If canaries were ranked in classes, I would definitely stand at the very top of the hierarchy. Because from any perspective, Joel was truly a man favored by heaven. More importantly, he had no previous romantic history, and therefore none of those white moonlight first loves that appear in domineering CEO novels. I was not anyone's substitute. I was simply a companion who happened to catch his eye. I stayed by his side for 7 years. People came and went, but I alone remained. So many people envied my good luck. Perhaps I had been flattered by those words too much. That was why, when Alice appeared, I fell so painfully. Chapter 4. Speaking of it, the way Alice and Joel met was even more like something out of an idol drama. According to the driver, Alice was rushing to Joel's company for an interview, driving a tiny Wuling Hongguang, when she crashed into Joel's Rolls-Royce. The damned red thread of fate must have tied a dead knot for them right at that moment. Joel was a man who valued efficiency above all else. Every second of his time was calculated in dollars, and he had no intention of wasting it on the roadside with a tearful Alice. But she still insisted on leaving her phone number. Sir, don't worry, I'm going to interview at Huatian Capital. Once I get a job, I'll definitely pay you back. This is my phone number. Please feel free to contact me anytime. I once thought my life was fortunate enough, but only then did I realize that as long as Joel wished, he could become the savior of any ordinary girl. The day Joel proposed ending our relationship, I casually asked him a question. Joel, I'm curious, why did you make an exception and give Alice an offer? Love at first sight? That would be too foolish. But then how else could one explain that among the new recruits at Huatian Capital, all master's graduates from top overseas universities, Alice was the only one who had graduated from an ordinary undergraduate college? Joel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand and let his fingertips brush across my eyes. The cold touch made me shiver instinctively. He smiled gently, but the words from his thin lips were crueler than anything else, slicing my heart like a knife. Gloria, don't you think Alice's eyes look a lot like yours when you were younger? Chapter 5. I am 30 this year. Although I spend 7 figures every year on maintenance and skincare, money cannot ultimately compete with the great force of gravity. No one stays young forever, but there will always be someone who is young. 23. That was the age when Joel and I first got together. Alice is 23 now. Do our eyes really look alike? The day I moved out of the house I had lived in with Joel for 4 years, I packed my things and waited for the car. During that time, I stared at my reflection in the mirror and thought about that question. My eyes are the typical peach blossom eyes, long and narrow, with the outer corners slightly curved in an ambiguous arc. But Alice's eyes are innocent apricot-shaped eyes, clear like water, bright like stars, with dark and pure pupils. How could they resemble mine even in the slightest? Joel had never been particularly attentive toward me, yet I couldn't bring myself to hate him. After all, as a patron, he had been very responsible. When ending the 7-year relationship, he showed a sincere determination to settle everything fairly. The apartment in the city center and the villa in the suburbs are yours. The car is under your name. I'll have someone handle the transfer of the funds and stocks. I've already spoken to the agency company as well. These are what I can think of for now. If there's anything else you need, you can ask. You can ask anything. Those words symbolized endless possibilities and indulgence. I thought that if Joel didn't feel some guilt toward me, he wouldn't have said that. At such a moment, I should have taken advantage of that faint guilt and calmly thought about how to maximize my own interests. But for some reason, instead of asking for 2 more properties as security, I blurted out foolishly, "Let's have one last hug." That request instantly dragged what should have been a dignified adult separation into the level of a completely cliched melodrama. Joel's handsome brows furrowed tightly after hearing those words. His deep black eyes studied me with an unreadable expression. I believed someone as intelligent as him must have seen through my feelings, but he still agreed. All right. When I leaned against his chest, Joel's crisp, cool scent filled my nose. His heartbeat sounded slow and steady beside my ear. It felt like a dream. We had once been much closer than this, close enough to be called a negative distance. Yet at this moment, this felt just right. Unfortunately, this 7-year dream had to end eventually. The moment I stood up, I couldn't stop 2 hot tears of a canary from falling onto his chest. I only hoped he didn't notice. Chapter 6. I thought that Joel and I would not see each other again for a very, very long time. But in fact, less than 3 months after we separated, I ran into Joel again at a jewelry gala hosted by a luxury brand. Wow, isn't this Gloria? I ran into my goddess again, ah. At that moment, I was wearing a ruby necklace worth 40 million. Chatting with potential clients. The profession of being a celebrity looks glamorous on the surface, but in the eyes of the wealthy, we are nothing more than clothes hangers. In this circle, there are many rich ladies who don't even bother trying on clothes themselves when shopping. They simply invite celebrities to wear them to show the effect, then buy them without blinking an eye. The moment I heard Alice's voice, I knew Joel must also be there, and I had absolutely not prepared myself mentally to see Joel again. Chapter 7. I closed my eyes in slight despair and instinctively licked my lips, tasting the overly sweet lip gloss. Alice was wearing a smoky pink tulle evening gown today. It was clearly expensive and dazzlingly beautiful, almost blinding, standing beside the tall and handsome Joel in his elegant suit. The two of them looked extremely pleasing together. Someone like Joel had countless people coveting him and begging him for favors, so he rarely appeared in public social events, let alone at a luxury brand gala like this. If he was here tonight, it had to be for Alice. Not surprising. He had already broken plenty of his own rules for her. One more time didn't matter. I forced myself to maintain a carefully practiced smile and walked toward Alice to greet her. Hi, we meet again. From the corner of my eye, I saw Joel glance at me coldly, as if he were looking at a stranger. Ah, Sister Gloria, you look so beautiful today. Alice beamed brightly and rushed forward to hug me, but she suddenly stumbled. Her expression changed and she screamed as she fell straight toward me. However, I was also wearing 12-centimeter red-bottom high heels. When I tried to dodge the sudden impact, I moved too sharply and twisted my ankle. A piercing pain shot through my foot. Cold sweat immediately formed on my forehead. But what hurt even more was Joel's voice beside me, filled with shock, worry, and anger. Alice, when will you ever fix this reckless habit of yours? What if you had fallen? Chapter 8. Under everyone's gaze, Joel held Alice tightly in his arms. Alice stuck out her tongue in his embrace and blushed as she struggled free. Joel, sorry. I was just so happy to see Gloria. I really love that spy drama she starred in. She secretly glanced at me, her voice mixed with apology and concern. Sister Gloria, why does your expression look a bit strange? Did I scare you just now? Joel's gaze lingered on me vaguely. I deliberately avoided it. Thank you for your concern. It's my fault for not being professional enough. I simply didn't stand steadily. Sorry. That's good. I thought I scared you. If that were the case, I'd be guilty as hell. Alice smiled brightly, revealing two beautiful dimples. There was even admiration in her eyes. Sister Gloria, are you some kind of fairy descended to Earth? You're even more stunning in person than on TV. This set of jewelry also complements your skin tone perfectly, fair skin and beauty. She turned to Joel with a cheerful smile. Right, Joel? Gloria is really beautiful, right? That question was truly. Joel couldn't handle her constant urging. He glanced at me perfunctorily and gave a simple mm. Then he pulled Alice slightly closer and pointed to the necklace on my neck. This Burmese pigeon blood ruby really complements skin tone. Do you like it? When I understood what he meant, my face turned pale. I forced out a bitter smile. Alice might truly be innocent, or perhaps her level was simply too high. Facing Joel's offer to buy her a gift, she waved her hands repeatedly to refuse. Joel's gaze toward her grew even gentler. After they left, I could still hear fragments of their conversation. Gloria really has an amazing figure. Did you see that? Oh wait. No, I take it back. You're not allowed to look at her. Then Joel's voice, smiling, entered my ears clearly. All right, I won't look at anyone except you. Only then did I realize that sometimes having excellent hearing could also be a burden. Chapter 9. Heartbreak could be endured, but the pain in my foot was becoming unbearable. I looked down. My slender ankle had swollen several times its normal size. Half helpless and half bitter. I sighed softly. Then I looked around the room in confusion. That was when I noticed a man. He had apparently been quietly watching the spectacle for quite some time. Even when I noticed him, he didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, he raised his wine glass and toasted me from afar. He walked over with long strides, looking down at me from above. He spoke with a hint of displeasure. Hey, is this really all the backbone you have? What? I looked at him in confusion. His gaze blatantly moved toward my ankle. Feeling uncomfortable, I stepped back, but the pain made me gasp. He clicked his tongue. Your foot is swollen like that, and you still don't want to get revenge on that heartless ex of yours? Sir, please don't joke. This is my job. He raised an eyebrow and nodded. Then he spoke casually, as if buying high jewelry worth tens of millions was the same as buying a cabbage at a market. Fine, I'll take it. I'll buy everything you're wearing. You can clock out now. Without waiting for my response, he walked to my side. Seeing my guarded expression, he chuckled lightly and waved over the event manager. The manager immediately bowed respectfully. Sir, what can I assist you with? All the jewelry on Miss Gloria, I'll take them. The manager beamed with joy. Thank you, sir. You truly have great taste. This set is one of the highlights of tonight's collection. Many members have been asking about it. Thank me? The man cast a cool glance at the ruby necklace around my neck. His gaze slowly traveled upward until it settled on my face. He smiled lazily. Has it never occurred to you that all those people asking about this jewelry should actually thank Miss Gloria? At least in my case. If it weren't for her, this would just be a pile of worthless stones. Chapter 10. It wasn't until the next day, when I was woken up by a call from my manager, that I learned who the man was that had helped me out of that situation at the gala. The sole heir of his family, Noah. The Noah family, like Joel's, came from an old money lineage where wealth had been accumulated generation after generation, forming an unshakable commercial empire. Apparently, a short conversation between Noah and me at the gala had been photographed and posted online, and the one who had it suppressed immediately was Joel. I was holding my phone, lost in thoughts about why Joel would step in to suppress that news, when suddenly his call came through. 3 months had already passed, yet it seemed I still hadn't escaped the role of a canary. Almost instinctively, I picked up the call at lightning speed. "Hello? Come downstairs." He gave the order decisively and directly. I walked to the window and looked down. His black Bentley came into view. He leaned against the front of the car with his legs crossed, smoking, cigarette butts scattered all over the ground by his feet. Why had he come? To question me? I let out a long breath, without even looking in the mirror. I grabbed a cloak casually and went downstairs. When Joel saw my bare face, he raised his brows slightly. A flicker of surprise flashed across his eyes. Strange, yet not strange. After all, during the past 7 years, he had never seen me without makeup. In the first 2 years it was simply because I loved beauty and was passionate about my career. But during the 5 years after I turned 25, it was entirely because I didn't dare. No matter how carefully you maintain yourself, collagen inevitably fades with time. All I could do was use makeup to fill the cracks carved by the passing years. Looking back now, those days when I had to wake up at 5 in the morning, even on my days off, to do my makeup and hair felt like a lifetime ago. Fortunately, that was no longer necessary. Early autumn in City A carried a hint of chill. The autumn wind swept golden leaves across the ground to my feet, filling the air with a sense of desolation. It was at that moment that Joel noticed the ankle brace on my foot through the drifting leaves. "Sorry. I didn't know you were injured." "What happened?" My eyelid twitched. So Joel didn't even know I had sprained my ankle. I quickly accepted that fact and smiled lightly. "No need for your concern." I twisted it while going downstairs. "What do you need?" What is your relationship with Noah?" I tightened my cloak and replied coldly. "No relationship." Joel narrowed his eyes slightly. A chilling expression flickered in his gaze as if he were judging the truth of my words. After a long moment, his expression softened. The sharpness in his eyes faded. He rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly and lit another cigarette. "The domestic market is only so big. Noah's family and mine have been rivals for years. I'm not sure whether Noah might use you after returning to the country. So he had rushed here to warn me. 7 years of my life had been poured into this relationship without even making a sound." Joel completely regarded me as a heartless actress who would go with whoever had money. All that remained in my heart was a self-mocking smile and endless sorrow. "Don't worry." For the first time in my life, I interrupted Joel. "These 7 years we spent together, I've always kept gratitude in my heart for the opportunity you gave me. Everything about you will remain buried inside me forever." "Gratitude?" Joel looked confused and repeated my words. I stepped back and nodded with a smile. Not even a single tear fell. Joel stopped me just as I turned around to go home. It was rare to see hesitation in him. But that day, his expression wavered for the first time. "Gloria, do you hate me?" Countless thoughts brushed through my mind. I froze for a moment. In the end, I didn't know how to answer. So I simply said, without context, "I hope we both find happiness." Chapter 11. Happiness is a vague word, yet sometimes it can become specific down to one small thing. I'm not a masochist. Many people think that staying by Joel's side meant I suffered endless grievances. But in fact, all my grievances were born only after I fell in love with him. Joel was generous and gentlemanly to his companions, and occasionally he would even offer moments of warmth, little sweeteners. The time I remember most clearly was my 25th birthday. Joel happened to be abroad and had just closed a very big deal. Perhaps he was in a good mood either way. He took me to celebrate on the most luxurious 7-star private island in the Maldives archipelago. The privacy was extreme. We were the only guests on the island. Now I've almost forgotten how extravagant that island was. and how attentive the service was. What remains in my heart is a fragment from the moment just before midnight on my birthday. A staff member walked up to Joel and spoke to him softly. Then Joel, who had been sitting beside me, raised his hand to check his watch. He pinched out his cigarette and stood up, moving behind me. Instinctively, I also tried to stand, but he smiled and shook his head, pressing his hand on my shoulder to stop me. I was a little tense. Above my head, Joel's voice fell gently. Your gift, Kudadu Island's first fireworks show of the year. I looked up at him in surprise. He lifted his hand slightly toward the staff. Then he reached out and covered my ears, signaling for me to look up at the sky. The bell marking my 25th year rang out with a tremendous boom. Dazzling fireworks slowly burst open in the deep ink-black night above the island, dyeing the entire sea with color. They also painted Joel's face in shifting hues. His eyes were calm, as if the breeze itself could pass through them, but I saw a rare softness and warmth. His lips formed the words, "Happy birthday." That year, I turned 25. After that, whenever I heard the song "Fireworks Easily Turn Cold," I would think of that grand, brilliant midnight fireworks display on the island. Afterward, every year on my birthday, Joel would have his assistant prepare expensive gifts and send them into my walk-in closet, turning me into the entertainment industry's most mysterious actress, one who never borrows couture, yet always appears at events wearing couture and high jewelry. But I knew something had changed. Perhaps it was that fireworks turn cold, and people drift apart, and day and night are no longer to be found again. Chapter 12. What was dramatic was that on my 31st birthday, I ran into Joel again. Since the day we parted downstairs at my place, we hadn't seen each other for half a year. Once you've lived past 30, you realize there are many things in this world more important than so-called birthdays. I got an exceptionally good film opportunity. From the script to the production team to the director, every part of it represented the top tier in the country, with real potential to win awards. It was the kind of prized project that made every actress in the industry jealous. Everyone fought for the role, competing for a chance at a Best Actress title. But the casting team didn't even look at anyone else. They came directly to me. I heard that choosing me was the investor's decision, and the investor had only one request. I had to appear on camera without makeup. That request wasn't strange. The character was a pregnant woman with a harsh fate, and appearing barefaced would indeed portray the role more effectively. Perhaps because I had spent so many years beside Joel maintaining the habit of always wearing makeup. Even with such a golden opportunity placed in front of me, I hesitated for several hours. In the end, my manager became so anxious that she took a taxi straight to my home, yanked me away from the mirror, and only then did I wake up as if from a dream. With a strong script and a professional team guiding me, I blended into the role quickly, and the entire production went unexpectedly smoothly. At the wrap party, I finally learned that the mysterious investor was Joel's Lushan Capital. When I pushed the door open, Joel was surrounded by people toasting him, while he idly rubbed the black prayer beads around his wrist. There was a faint distance on his face, and he didn't bother to give anyone face. Not surprising, he never needed to come to an occasion like this in person. A strange thought crept into my mind. Joel, could he be here to see me? Yet no matter how much my thoughts ran wild, the dinner remained calm, and nothing happened. Joel sat across from me the whole time, quietly as if he were thinking about something. During the entire meal, I remember he said only one sentence. Miss Gloria looks remarkably beautiful without makeup. I don't know whether he even remembered what day it was. Chapter 13. When I went out to the restroom to touch up my makeup, I ran into a familiar face, Alice. She was wearing a white floral cotton linen dress with a light goose yellow cardigan. Completely out of place here. I was a little surprised to see her. Miss Alice, what are you doing here? Alice's attitude toward me had changed almost 180 degrees from the last 2 times we met. Gloria. Her eyes were full of tears, like a frightened white rabbit. Since you and Joel had that kind of relationship, why did you tell me you were just the company's spokesperson? Were you too amused watching me get played like a fool? What? As expected of a movie star, look how innocent you act. Alice let out a cold laugh and wiped her tears roughly. Yesterday Joel suddenly broke up with me. I cried and questioned him for 20 minutes before he told me everything. She stepped toward me, pressing closer and closer. Early this morning he told me he had a dinner meeting and told me not to make trouble. But I know I know today is your birthday. Today is your birthday. The more she spoke, the sadder she became. She squatted down and burst into loud sobs. Why did it have to be you? Gloria? I really like you so much. Why is the person in Joel's heart you? Clearly I was the one being accused. Yet my heart began to ache along with hers. My face turned pale as I leaned against the sink, momentarily dazed. Chapter 14. That farce eventually ended when the crying and shouting from the restroom attracted the staff, who came to mediate. Joel looked at Alice, who was sobbing uncontrollably in my arms, his expression dark and unreadable. He called his assistant and told him to take Alice to the car first to calm her down. What did Alice say to you? She's just a young girl. You don't have to take what she said to heart. Of course I wouldn't take it to heart, because I didn't believe for a second that Joel had broken up with Alice because of me. More likely, he had simply used me as a shield when the novelty wore off. He chose the most efficient way to push away an enthusiastic and bold young girl who clung to him like sticky glue. It was a man's usual trick. When he couldn't face his own change of heart, he chose to shift the blame onto another woman. But my heart was already like the ruins left behind after fireworks burned out. It was difficult for it to rise and fall again because of Joel. I shook my head calmly. You're overthinking it, Joel. I paused. And once again, thank you for your patronage. This project is very important to me. Thank you. I bowed respectfully to him at a full 45-degree angle. His face darkened as he looked at me, his gaze as cold as eternal ice. Suddenly he stepped forward and grabbed my arm, gripping so tightly it felt like he might crush my bones. Gloria, patronage. Is that the only phrase you know how to say? What else would you like me to say? My voice was calm. That calmness made Joel look as if he had just punched a sandbag, and he instantly deflated. Gloria. I probably shouldn't have come today, but I realized that in these 7 years, the only birthday I actually spent with you was your 25th. It's hard to see through the human heart. Perhaps I only just realized what I truly want. I once gave you fireworks. This year, I want to place the best thing in the world, and my heart, into your hands. Would you give me the chance to make up for it? Heh, make up for it. I raised one hand and forcibly pried Joel's hand off my arm. My voice sounded icy and slightly trembling. Not long after we separated, I had surgery on my eyes because every time I looked in the mirror and remembered what you said, I would lose control and start crying. I couldn't live normally. When my agent found out, she scolded me mercilessly. You know, this was extremely irresponsible for my career. Later I asked the doctor, and he said it could be repaired, but the repair also carried the risk of failure. When I came out of the hospital, there was a heavy rainstorm, but rain can't wash away fate, and not every mistake in this world can be fixed. So I had no choice but to bear the consequences myself. Then, what about you? Pulling myself out of those painful memories, I took a deep breath and raised my eyes to look at Joel. He stared straight into my eyes, and there were faint traces of tears in them. Chapter 15. Not long afterward, news of Joel's engagement began circulating privately. The fiancé, of course, was no longer the grassroots girl Alice, but Miranda, the only daughter of a well-known industrial tycoon in Y City. Setting aside her prominent family background, Miranda herself had an impressive resume. She graduated from an Ivy League university overseas and, after returning to China, joined the country's largest law firm. A true daughter of heaven, one might say. The news was told to me personally by Noah. Over the past half year, Noah had been haunting my life like a persistent ghost. If he wasn't sending flowers, he was visiting the set. If he wasn't dragging me onto the trending topics on Weibo because we were spotted together, he was spending hundreds of thousands sending support food trucks to my film crew, each one plastered with my photos. When he came to tell me the news, I was idly rubbing the rim of my coffee cup on the table. Gloria, do you know the best way to get revenge on a man? He snapped his fingers, pulling me out of my wandering thoughts. His tone lifted slightly, and paired with his fair, handsome face, it carried a strangely tempting charm. Marry his sworn enemy. Trust me, it'll make Joel suffer day and night. If you're willing, I'm always ready to marry you. No prenuptial agreement either. Gloria, you're already in your 30s. How many more years do you think you can keep eating from the entertainment industry's bowl? And I truly like you. From the first time I saw you in 10 Miles, I thought, I have to marry this woman someday, no matter how old you are. I like you. Here we go again. That familiar tone of arrogance, someone rich and powerful assuming that money and status entitled him to everything. I chuckled softly and leaned back in my chair, gazing out at the lake through the window. Noah, be realistic. We're not suitable. He didn't care at all. His voice carried absolute confidence. Do you think I'm some awkward idiot like Joel? Gloria, once you've made as much money as we have, you can't spend it all in several lifetimes. So-called matching social status is just icing on the cake. And if I, Noah, want to marry the woman I like, well, that flower might as well be worn on Joel's head. Noah had been raised with a Western education. When it came to emotions, he was frank and bold, and his words sounded even sweeter than songs. If I didn't know he was keeping several young and beautiful women outside and even had a 3-year-old son overseas, I might almost have believed him. Whether he was genuinely interested in me or simply wanted to use me to provoke Joel, I had no desire to involve myself in the world of these so-called people from another class. I don't think my life has enough room left for that many mistakes. I had no interest in listening further. I picked up my bag, stood up, and put on my sunglasses. Just before leaving, I paused, turned back, and reminded Noah, Mr. Noah, I'd like to correct one thing you said. The best way to take revenge on a man is never to gamble with him out of spite. It's simply to live your life peacefully and happily every day without him. That's all. Chapter 16. Actually, I'm getting married too. No one knows this. I've told him many times, but he simply refuses to take my fiancé seriously. The man is a double Best Actor winner I once worked with. He's the same age as me, and his name is Ryan. He's refined and handsome, meticulous in everything he does, and has an impeccable reputation in the industry. It's hard to imagine that his background was so difficult. When he was 3 years old, his father died in an accident while working on a construction site. From then on, he depended on his mother and older sister. Fortunately, because of his handsome face, he was discovered by a talent scout in college and entered the entertainment industry. He is completely different from people like Joel or Noah. Their confidence comes from the ease of being born with everything. Ryan's maturity and dignity, on the other hand, come from having seen all the ugliness of this world, accepting it all with a smile, and still showing endless tenderness toward the world. After everything I've been through, I find myself longing for that tenderness. Our relationship developed naturally, almost effortlessly. From the very beginning, I told him everything about my past. Looking back now, perhaps it was that moment when he heard my story. His eyes reddened as he pulled me into his arms and gently stroked my eyes. It's my fault. If only I had met you earlier. That was the first time in my life I thought about the words forever. Ryan and I had a very low-key wedding. Everything was kept simple. Only close family and friends were invited. And we didn't even notify the media. So I have no idea how Joel found out. I heard he had a serious car accident and stayed in the hospital for quite a long time. The day before the wedding, I received a small yellow envelope delivered by Joel's assistant. Knowing Joel's style, I thought it would be something like a check as a wedding gift. But inside, there was only a photograph. In the picture, I was wearing a white dress, sitting on a bench by the sea, my black hair fluttering in the wind. Joel stood behind me with a faint smile, covering my ears to block out the noise of the fireworks filling the sky. Behind us was the cold yet dazzling fireworks display. The photo had captured the exact moment when the fireworks exploded into the shape of the letters JY. When I turned the photo over, a few bold words were written on the back in sweeping handwriting. Gloria, happy wedding. Joel, extra chapter. Chapter 1. After Gloria left, I started dreaming frequently. My dreams were varied, but the one I had most often was of the time when Gloria had just come into my life. Back then, when she timidly stood before me, she was only 23 years old. Gloria had been abandoned as a baby and grew up in an orphanage. After turning 18, thanks to her face, she entered the entertainment industry. When I met her, she had already been in the industry for 5 years, yet she was still as inexperienced as a girl who had just stepped into the world. That day, the news arrived that my mother had died overseas. For once, I completely lost control. I drank until I was thoroughly drunk. Then in the corridor, I ran into her, wearing a pink dress, hiding in a corner and clutching her chest as she cried. At first she was only sobbing softly. Later she slid down the wall and sat on the floor, burying her head as she cried quietly. She cried so heartbreakingly that it felt as if all the emotions I couldn't release were being vented through her. I heard her speaking on the phone to someone, perhaps her best friend. I really don't want to live anymore. I'm so tired. Why does my agent always make me wear clothes I don't like and do things I don't want to do? I just want to earn money and act. Why is it so difficult? Those men's eyes scare me. The director of the orphanage was right. This world isn't as simple as we imagined. I stood there listening to the girl's disjointed complaints, leaning against the wall around the corner, smoking cigarette after cigarette until the pack was empty. Eventually, her crying stopped. I asked my assistant to find the people in that private room and tell them that I wanted that girl. When she stood before me, she was trembling. She seemed to like wearing dusty pink dresses. They suited her very well, making her youthful face look like peach blossoms in bloom. In truth, that face of hers was indeed beautiful enough. I asked her name, Gloria. When she answered, she carefully lifted her eyes to look at me. I still remember that look. There was stubbornness mixed with timidity, innocent purity that didn't understand the world, yet tinged with curiosity and exploration. Later I realized that I loved that lively gaze very much, so I allowed Gloria to stay by my side. But I didn't expect her to be so clever. Once she stayed, it lasted 7 years. Chapter 2. Gloria's sensibility exceeded my expectations. At first, I even had difficulty distinguishing whether her feelings toward me were sincere or merely an act. It was the first time I had ever felt curious about a woman accompanying me. I remember once a friend of mine got into trouble. His companion became pregnant and came to him crying with the medical report, demanding a title and a status. In the end, everything collapsed and he lost both money and reputation. When I told Gloria about it, I commented casually, "A woman who falls in love is usually incredibly foolish." If she hadn't made such an ugly scene, that child alone would have been enough to guarantee her wealth and comfort for the rest of her life. Actually, I hadn't meant to warn her, but she was so easily alarmed that the hand holding the soup for me paused for a moment. Yes, women should be a little smarter. She hid the flash of disappointment in her eyes and forced a smile as she pushed the soup toward me. "You've been working so hard lately. The aunt made the soup. Drink some more. If you like it, I'll get you another bowl." Smart? Not really. Otherwise she should have realized that the housekeeper was paid by me. Everything that happened in this house, every detail, was reported to me. That naturally included the fact that she had secretly asked the housekeeper to teach her how to make soup and told her not to let me know. Under the bright crystal chandelier that night, I clearly saw the trace of moisture at the corner of Gloria's eye. That was the first time I was certain of Gloria's feelings for me. With previous companions, once things reached that stage, I would let them leave, but for the first time in my life, I chose to pretend everything was fine with Gloria, and we continued pretending for 7 whole years. Chapter 3. The year Gloria turned 30. I met Alice on the roadside. I hate young girls who cry and make a scene. It irritates me. In this world, youth has never been an excuse for mistakes. When I was 20, I had already taken over the family business. The year I stripped my father of his authority. I was only 22. But when I impatiently rolled up the car window and told the driver to continue to the company, I faintly heard her crying into the phone. I couldn't get into graduate school. I couldn't pass the civil service exam, and I don't even know if I'll pass this interview. Now I've crashed into such an expensive car. I really don't want to live anymore. I'm so tired. The adult world is really exhausting. The words sounded strangely familiar. For some inexplicable reason, I changed my mind and rolled down the car window again. She hurriedly pulled a sticky note out of her bag, scribbled her phone number, and stuffed it into my hand. I didn't even look at the note, because my attention was entirely on her tear-filled eyes. That stubborn, unwilling gaze dragged me back 7 years. After thinking about it for a moment, I decided to keep her by my side. Chapter 4. Learning to smoke might be the only thing I regret in this lifetime. When I was young and had just taken over the company, there were many things to learn. The pressure was suffocating, so I picked up smoking to relieve stress and keep my mind clear. But in truth, I hate anything that can make me addicted. My life, from the company's investment plans for the next few years to which tie I should wear with today's suit, should always be orderly and controlled. Nothing should ever go beyond my expectations. Yet Gloria seemed to become that exception. Over the years she changed quite a lot. She became increasingly cautious. A friend once shared his theory with me. He said he enjoyed the feeling of women fighting over him. According to him, a woman's first reaction when she loves someone is jealousy, possessiveness, and hysteria. I couldn't agree. Thinking of the women who once developed inappropriate feelings for me, I usually avoided them at all costs. But then I thought of Gloria. During the years she stayed by my side. She asked for nothing. Even the occasional loss of control or girlish temperament she once showed had disappeared. It felt as though she regarded staying with me as merely a job, and I was simply her employer. That should have been perfect. But why did the thought always leave a dull ache in my chest? I actually began to feel troubled and suspicious because of a woman. I started to feel like a boat drifting off its course. I thought nicotine addiction was the only exception in my life. I couldn't allow another. So I chose to end the relationship. I have always been ruthless. If I could strip my own father of power and abandon my seriously ill mother overseas, then letting go of a woman who had stayed by my side for 7 years, one I still couldn't fully understand, shouldn't have been difficult. Besides, wasn't there still Alice? When Gloria asked me why I made an exception for Alice, my answer was simple. Her eyes looked very much like Gloria's when she was younger. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, like a butterfly fluttering in the wind. I have always been generous to women, especially to her. She gave me the best years of her youth. What I gave her was enough for her to live well, but I still hoped she would ask something from me. The more she demanded, the more the guilt and unease in my heart would fade. I told myself, Joel, Gloria was just one of the women who accompanied you. Nothing special. She just stayed a little longer. But she asked for nothing, only a hug. Then I felt a trace of warmth in my arms. She left decisively. That day, I sat alone in the house where we had lived together for 5 years, touching the tear stain on my shirt until dawn. It was the first time in my life that I doubted a decision I had made. Chapter 5. Half a year later, I ran into Gloria again at a gala. Of course, calling it a coincidence wasn't exactly accurate. Gloria was the brand's ambassador, and I was the one who connected her to it. So naturally I knew she would be there. I almost never go to places like that, noisy and stupid. But when I told Alice I would take her to a brand gala to broaden her horizons, her eyes curved like an arch bridge, and she said excitedly, "Wow, that's amazing! Thank you, President, for showing me the world." So I relaxed, comforting myself that I was only taking Alice to see the world, not because I wanted to see Gloria or anything like that. Time doesn't defeat beauty. Gloria was still stunning, almost the center of attention for the entire room, and the pigeon blood ruby set she wore truly flattered her complexion. At the worst possible moment, I thought of a friend's wedding. He bought his wife a full set of Burmese pigeon blood ruby jewelry. That flash of red against a pure white wedding dress was breathtakingly beautiful. Gloria's evening gown that night happened to be white as well, and I started imagining that if she wore that set at her own wedding, it wouldn't be bad either. The moment that thought slipped into my mind, it frightened me. I even noticed that as I pictured the scene of walking with Gloria into the hall of marriage, the corner of my mouth lifted into a subtle curve I couldn't control. Idiotic beyond belief. But fortunately, Alice was standing beside me, in front of Gloria. I lavished Alice with affection, and when I saw the stiff look on Gloria's face, an oddly twisted thrill rose in my chest. Chapter 6. My assistant came to me and told me that photos of Gloria and Noah had been printed in the papers. He said it was likely Noah's doing and asked me how I wanted to handle it. When I saw the photo, I was furious. I casually grabbed the crystal ashtray by the window and smashed it into the carpet, terrifying my assistant. Noah and I had been at odds for years, but how dare he reach toward Gloria? Looking back afterward, I couldn't believe it myself. Just the fact that Gloria was standing beside a man was enough to make me lose control like that. Letting someone like her go, was what I did really right? So I did something stupid again. I drove to Gloria's building and stood downstairs, blowing in the cold wind for 2 hours. During those 2 hours, countless thoughts passed through my mind, but in the end they all screamed the same thing at me. I wanted to see her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to keep her by my side. So I called her downstairs, and for the first time, I saw Gloria barefaced, without makeup. I was surprised, truly. Without that heavy makeup, I could even see the fine lines on her face and the faint, fragile redness of broken capillaries beneath her skin. I loved this version of Gloria even more. I felt as though only when she took off her mask did she belong to me completely. She didn't know where she had gotten hurt, but she was wearing an ankle brace. I blurted out and asked her what her relationship with Noah was. At that moment, I felt like a woman fighting over a man. Yet from Gloria's expression, it seemed she misunderstood my intention. Thinking I had come to interrogate her, her misunderstanding of me had become that deep. A heavy helplessness wrapped around me. In the end, at the very end, she told me, we should both be happy. Not that we should be happy together, but that we should both be happy. That day, I drove around the city for hours with no destination. The intense thrust of acceleration and the wind roaring past my ears made my mind painfully clear. But even at the end, I still couldn't figure out what I had missed. It surely wasn't just the countless days and nights when I hadn't seen Gloria without makeup. After I went back, I broke up with Alice. She cried terribly. In that moment, I only felt that I wasn't human, because watching her cry in front of me, hair a mess, I could only think of those two restrained, suppressed tears Gloria had left in my arms that day. Chapter 7. The way I thought of making amends was by investing in a very good script, one that could absolutely allow a leading actress to compete for Best Actress. I specifically named Gloria for the role. Of course, I had my selfish reasons. I also wanted to see her bare face again. Alice came after me. It wasn't exactly surprising. The night before, when I told her I would be attending a dinner at Fuyuan restaurant, I had already anticipated that she would show up, and that she would repeat everything I had said to Gloria. However, Gloria was frighteningly calm. Looking at her eyes, those that now bore traces of surgery, I suddenly realized that my arrogance and selfishness had destroyed such a good girl. She said it was her own fault, that she was suffering the consequences, but I knew very well in my heart, I was the real culprit. Chapter 8. The night I learned that Gloria was about to get married. I was in the car. In a moment of distraction, I stepped on the accelerator instead of the brake. The car crashed straight into the roadside guardrail. In the instant the massive impact struck, I thought my life had ended there. But when I woke up, I was in the hospital. My fiancé had stayed by my side day and night, taking care of me without rest. Noah came to visit with a fruit basket. After sending my fiancé away, I thought he was going to provoke me again, but the look in his eyes carried a trace of pity and a trace of self-mockery. His voice carried a teasing sarcasm. Well, I never knew you were such a devoted man that you'd crash a car for love. I replied irritably. Get lost. If I had returned to the country a few years earlier, Gloria wouldn't have had anything to do with you, he said with a hint of regret. You think she would have chosen you? Heh. Still stubborn as ever, he adjusted his suit, but I noticed the unshaven stubble on his jaw and the confusion in his eyes. Honestly, Joel, it's true I never thought much of that Ryan either. A poor kid from the slums. At the beginning I didn't even consider him worth my attention. But Gloria stayed with you for so many years. And I've been chasing her too, so why is she so foolish? I laughed. How could Gloria be foolish? She refused to be a pawn in the set of rules where people like us move the pieces. So she chose to step out of the game entirely. She stood above all of us. She never loved money. What she wanted was simply a peaceful and happy life. And that was something neither Noah nor I could give her. My girl. She was the smartest and the most clear-headed girl in the world. Chapter 9. On the day she got married, I was still in the hospital. I asked my assistant to retrieve a photograph I had treasured for a long time from the drawer in my study. Ironically, it was one of the very few warm moments Gloria and I had shared. Holding a fountain pen in my hand, I thought for a long time about what kind of blessing I should write, but all the books I had read in the past 30 years turned to dust in front of such raw emotion. I couldn't find a single word to express how I felt. The girl I loved most in my life was getting married. What could I possibly say? In the end, I scribbled the words "wish you happiness." Then I didn't dare look at the photo again and handed it to my assistant. Outside the window, night had fallen. My fiancée was still on her way. I didn't ask anyone to turn on the lights. In the dark hospital room, I leaned against the pillow of the hospital bed and closed my eyes in exhaustion.